May 3rd. So let's just get centered before we get into what we're going to kind of practice today and topic of the day. We'll just take a moment to arrive onto our mats, into our bodies, into this next hour of our dedicated yoga practice. So just taking a moment to switch the crossing of the legs into the less dominant cross-legged position. Do your best to spread the width between the sitting bones and pull the flesh out from underneath them. Try to find a sense of weightedness in your legs. And then taking just a few more moments to adjust the alignment of the torso and the skull. And keeping your shoulders back, join your hands together in front of your heart. And close your eyes, look away from your brain, and just start the act of paying attention. Noticing whatever you notice. Could be outside of your body, could be inside of your body. You might notice the mind already flitting away, time traveling as it does. Just bring it back to something here and now. Sensation outside of you, within you. Attention to your breath. As you feel ready, keeping the chest lifted, bowing toward the heart. Let your hands release down somewhere to your thighs. And on an in-breath, raise your head. And as you open your eyes, keeping your attention really inside of yourself. Welcome, everyone. So today we're going to study this idea called point zero that was coined by BKS Iyengar. And there's not a lot to be found to kind of explain this. There's a few paragraphs in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali that BKS Iyengar interpreted, which I will read to you. But while we're kind of listening, I'm going to have everybody hold hero pose so that we can start to address the legs and create space in our legs for our standing practice. So just setting up your hero pose, maybe using a blanket to support your shins if that's something that you like to do. You might need additional support kind of sandwiched between your thighs and calf muscles, especially if you have sensitive knees. You might need a little bit of height under the buttocks. You might use a block or a bolster for that. And then just take some special attention to make sure your kneecaps are looking straight ahead, your toes are sitting straight down, and that you're back in that nice aligned torso position. So the sutra that this idea, this concept of point zero comes up is pretty kind of well into the sutras. And I'll read it to you. I read this over and over and over again. And, the last two paragraphs really resonate for me, but how it links to the sutra is a little bit still of a mystery to me, I must say. So it begins with the translation of the sutra. The substrata is that which continues to exist and maintain its characteristic quality in all states, whether manifest, latent, or subdued. They're talking about states of consciousness. So towards the end of BKS Iyengar's interpretation of the sutra comes kind of what I found to be useful for our practice today. The import of this sutra can be used to practical advantage while practicing asana, pranayama, and meditation. If we observe the various scattered dust cells lying latent in the body and charge them so that they cohere, we can feel the inner unity and transform body, breath, and consciousness into designs in the form of different asanas, which are poses, and pranayamas, as the potter forms his clay into a variety of shapes. in asana if the energy of the body is harmonized to a point zero while in a state of tension. We reach precision. The same can be applied to the intake of breath, its distribution or discharge in pranayama, and in meditation. The combining of single point attention with all point attention at the core of one's being is the essence of this sutra. Point zero indicates the point of balance and harmony at which we can unlock and liberate the knotty confusion of matter and emotion. It also conveys the importance of finding the exact center of the meeting points of vertical extension and horizontal expansion in the body, breath, and consciousness. So we are going to run with that last part today. And we talk about extension, which is the axis, the central axis of the body that we're going to say runs with the spine because we move in different ways. I don't want to just say vertical because sometimes the spine is not vertical depending on how we're moving. And then the expansive quality is that horizontal idea of space. And we're going to kind of look for the axis point, the meeting point, the point zero today, and in all of our standing poses. So hopefully this brings some interest, some new kind of eye-opening moments in your standing work, which for most of us are very familiar. All right, there's my spiel. So go ahead and just take a few breaths in hero pose with your hands pressing down on your feet. We'll just do the 6 actions of the spine from this pose. So keeping the legs really anchored to the floor, inhale, raise the arms, extending up through the fingertips. And while you're here, just noticing we have this obvious extension, which is our vertical term. See if you can locate some less obvious expansion. So I'll give you a few tips. Think about the armpit region, the chest region, the abdomen, the lower back. Think about the bottoms of your feet. And when we can match the obvious kind of energy with the less obvious energy, we can start to tune into that harmonious state in our poses. And in some of the poses, the expansive quality will be dominant. In some of the poses, the extensive quality will be dominant. So we'll have to play with this a little bit. We're going to twist, exhale, turn to your right. So take your left hand to your right thigh, right hand behind you. And if you don't touch the floor, you might elevate to a block or some prop so that you don't have to lean back to meet the floor. We want to keep the spine vertical. So today we'll kind of run through some standing poses with this idea. And on Friday, we'll be talking a lot more about the abdomen and about twisting and apply that to this idea. So inhale, center, and exhale, we're going to twist to the other direction. Inhale, back to center. Exhale, lower your left hand. Keep the right arm lifted. Inhale here, and on an exhale, extending those right fingertips to the left. Anchoring back into your outer right shin. Keep yourself anchored down there and try to breathe some space back into the left side body. Inhale, center. Exhale, lower the right arm. Inhale, raise the left arm. And exhale, extending to the right. Inhale, center. Exhale, lowering the arm. Just sweeping your hands back a little bit. Now it is okay to lean back with your torso. Try to prop up on your fingertips and coil the shoulder blades in toward the chest to take a back bend. And make sure your tailbone is scooping toward the ceiling, into the body, toward the ceiling, that you're not collapsing at the neck. You're keeping a line of vertical extension all the way from tailbone through crown, and keeping the chest spread, the abdomen spread, the lower back spread, the bottoms of your feet spread, the armpits spread. Good. Inhale, center. And now you're gonna crawl forward, but I want you to keep your butt attached to whatever it's touching, props or otherwise. Walk your hands forward. So this isn't a full child's pose. This is just folding forward from hero pose. And as you bring your hands forward, try to put some weight back into your sitting bones. Grab the floor with the toenails and just feel that one singular curvature of your spine, brainstem to skull, brainstem to tailbone, sorry. Good. And now walking the hands in. We're going to relieve the legs from holding that hero pose for a long time. So we're going to find our way into downward facing dog. Feel free to modify the pose if you're somebody that's taking modifications for this pose. A chair can be a good modification if you're having issues with weight bearing. It's always good to see people doing their own needful things in their poses. So take yourself into downward dog on an exhalation. And so I find it a little more obvious in this pose that the extension dominates. That means running with the spine. We, of course, extend the backs of the legs, we extend the torso, we extend the sides of the torso. So if we want to find that harmonious state, we have to bring a little more awareness into the expansive qualities here. So I want you to think about the backs of the knees broadening, and broadening is a term I'm going to use today to kind of ask you to expand. That means running perpendicular to the spine. Broadening the lower back and the abdomen. Find a way to broaden the distance between the shoulders. And just staying for as many more breaths as you can before coming into child's pose. And because we had those knees so deeply flexed, we want to really take a moment to broaden the backs of the knees and to also extend the backs of the knees. And go ahead and lower the knees down to the edges of the mat. You can move the feet together, sitting back, leave the hands forward. And if the head doesn't like to touch the floor directly, if it's too far away or the surface bothers you, make sure to prop your forehead. Inviting, of course, first the extension of the spine, the torso, that elongation from the skull all the way to the tailbone. And then holding that, see if you can match the amount of extension you have with an amount of broadening or expansion. So this is yet another way in our yoga practice. We're always playing with unions of opposites. Yoga means union. And this is just another one of those pairings that can bring a sense of peacefulness into our poses, harmony. Go ahead and find your way back to your downward dog, and we are going to walk this into Uttanasana, so standing forward bend. So also locate your 2 blocks. And if you don't have 3 blocks today, you're going to locate a chair and put it in front of you so you're working with the chair seat. If you do have 3 blocks, you're going to have all 3 blocks. The 3rd block you're going to use in a moment, so just leave it aside. So from downward facing dog, start to tiptoe toward the wrists until your legs arrive in alignment, heels in line with hips, and also the feet are hip distance. So we're going to give ourselves that broadness right away by not bringing the feet together. And then I want you to put your hands on your blocks or chair, whatever you're working with. And I want you to grab that 3rd block or 1st block if you're using the chair and put it the narrowest aspect between your inner thighs. Okay, so the idea here is that everybody has something between the thighs to space the thighs, and everybody has something under the hands. For most of us, the floor isn't accessible, especially this early in the practice. If the floor is available, you can also use that. And just be in your concave flat lumbar position here with the legs extended. So in Uttanasana, we're very focused on the upward energy of the legs. We don't often talk about the broadness. So I want you to squeeze the block with your thighs and invite a sense of broadness to the backs of the thighs, the calf muscles behind the knees. And you should feel good contact, good pressure with your block. So the block gives us something we can resist against. Otherwise, we're just kind of working with our own imaginations, which isn't as helpful sometimes. Okay, so squeezing the block, this will help you stabilize the pelvis to come up. Take your hands to your hips, inhale, come up. So now I want to bring your attention, I'm going to move my camera a little bit because it's a little bit off. We're going to talk about that broadness, but I also want you to think about it moving in two directions. It can move out, but it can move in. So thinking about energy moving out to the sides or into the sides. The broadness working in two directions. So we're going to play with that. And those of you that have been in my classes have done this a few times before. Raise your arms. When we come into the forward bend, I want you to imagine that you're spreading the sitting bones wider and you're broadening outward, okay? So come to the top of an inhale, extend forward and imagine your sitting bones spreading wider. This makes room for you to come in deeper and the backs of the legs are nice and broad. Look forward. And kind of feel that the block may be shifted slightly back there. Your inner thighs are rolling back. Now to help us come out of the pose, we want to do the opposite. We want to kind of pull the broadness of the thighs back in. We want to move the hips closer together, the sitting bones closer together. So thinking about that, bringing your hands to your hips, inhale, squeeze that block, and bring that sense of broadness kind of inward toward the center point of the body. Okay, let's try it one more time. Inhale, raise the arms. On the exhale, see if you can send that block back, broaden the backs of the thighs. Of course, the legs are still extending in a vertical way, but now we're also tapping into that balancing aspect of the broadening. Hands to the hips, squeeze the block, bring the block forward, move the hips and sitting bones closer together and come up. Wonderful. Go ahead and take your block from between your thighs. You can move your other blocks out of the way. And we'll come into standing mountain pose. I want everybody to find a strap. So take a strap and make a loop with it. When the loop is placed around your wrists, your arms should appear parallel with each other and your wrists are as wide as your shoulders. And then step your feet that same width apart. So we're starting a pose that's very focused on extension, and we're going to just bring ideas of expansion into it. So we're already expanding a little bit by making the pose a little bit wider than it usually is. Usually the feet are together here. Once you've placed your strap around your wrist, take the arms up, Urdhva Hastasana position, upward hand. And we're going to start at the feet. So first just notice, are they broad? You might sense that you've kind of rolled some of your feet under you. So if you're feeling the feet kind of shrunken in a lateral way, lift your feet and spread them. Spread between the ball mounds, spread between the toes, even spread the heels from side to side. Broaden the backs of the legs like you just did in Uttanasana. Broaden the sacrum. Spread the abdomen toward the sacrum to support that broadness. And then the strap here, even though the arms are moving straight up and down, running with the spine, I want you to sense how resisting into the strap can broaden the chest, armpits, and upper back. We're imprinting the body with this spaciousness. A couple more breaths. Keep taking the hands and arms slightly back without pushing your face forward. And see if you can just kind of hold the energies in the same kind of simultaneously, the extension and the expansion. And that hopefully will help you arrive into that point zero state. Good. And go ahead and release the arms. Good. And we can put the strap aside for now. Now, you have the option to work with a chair seat for your standing poses, or you can work with a block. It depends, for me, how much yard work I did today, or this weekend. I did a ton, and my back is really stiff, but I'm going to work with blocks. You can decide if you're going to work with a chair seat or blocks. Way too much forward flexion over the weekend. I tried to offset it with some back bends, but it wasn't quite enough. So we're going to apply some of these ideas to triangle pose first. So your option to jump out, or you can step out depending on your needs. If you're jumping out, try not to gain too much vertical height, but do try to spread the feet significantly. And then take your hands to your hips as we arrange the legs. Move from the root of the right thigh, taking the right toes out 90 degrees. Move from the root of the left thigh, taking the left toes in 15 to 45 degrees. And then steer your torso to square back up with the broad side of the mat. Okay, go back to your Urdhva Hastasana arms, encouraging the vertical energy in this pose, the extension. But find that broadness again, find the expansiveness. Open the arms, which will help you create that sense of expansion. And then rotate elbows to fingertips. Inhale here. Exhale, extending to the right. Place your hand to the chair seat or the block so it's in line with your shoulder. So here the obvious is on extension, and we lose track of expansion in this pose. So go back to finding ways to expand your body. That means running perpendicular to the spine. Okay, so the armpit gets a little crushed down below. Find a spacious right armpit. Find a broadness in your chest. Find a broadness in your sacrum. Notice if the feet are broad, if the abdomen is doing its part, supporting a broad lower back. Is the upper back broad? Good. And just a couple more breaths. You're going to lift through the top arm and use an inhale to come up. Good, toes forward, jump or step back in. Bring the feet together if you can, unfold the arms, and see about mountain pose. So now we've kind of narrowed the pose, but can you still feel expansive? Can you match the extensive quality of the pose with expansive quality? Find making the pose a little bit more harmonious, balanced, peaceful. And then when you're ready, eyes open. Jump or step out. We'll set up for the left side. Hands to the hips as you get the legs in position. Move from the root of the thigh. That's so we don't rotate knees, or so that we don't forget that the thighs are part of the legs. Steer your torso to point up and square up with the broad side of the mat, shoulders and hips. Take the arms up, inviting that verticality. And then open the arms, inviting the broadness. Rotate elbows to fingertips to keep the upper arms active. Inhale here, and then exhale, extending to the left. Taking that left hand onto the chair seat or the block. And now we still feel a lot of that extensive quality of the pose. Find the broadening quality, the expansiveness. Bringing a sense of balance that way. There's those junctions where we cross over with extension and expansion. We've talked about them a lot. Chest, armpit, lower back, abdomen, the feet. Good. We're going to use an in-breath to lead the pose, lift through the top arm, anchor into your legs. Wonderful. Toes pointing forward, jump or step back in. And then you're back in mountain pose. Feet together, you can still leave space between the feet if you need that for stability. Otherwise, we're gonna work with just a little more narrow position and create the broadness in other ways. Close your eyes, look down. Visually kind of draw a map. Center point, the vertical lines, the horizontal lines, intersection points. Good. And then open the eyes. Okay, so now we're going to kind of play with this. Remember we talked about broadness can move out and can move in. So now we're going to do revolving triangle, and that idea of broadness is going to move in for hip compaction. So we're going to play with that. You again can work with chair seat, or you can work with blocks, but if you're working with blocks, you're going to want them both on your right. And your choice again, jump or step out. Hands to the hips. This time we're going to move from the root of the right thigh, toes point right, directly in front of the heel, but you're going to toe way in with the left so that your hips and shoulders are going to now point to the right as well. All right, so pivot, I don't know who that is. Someone needs to swivel. It's Mindy, maybe? There you go. Okay, so first of all, make sure you're not on a balanced beam, that you feel steady in your legs, that your feet are broad and you're even in your feet. We know there's asymmetry in this pose, so we have to bring some balance to the feet. Make sure the ball mounds are kind of evenly hitting the floor. The toes are evenly hitting the floor. Okay, inhale, raise your arms, encouraging extension in the body. Extend forward and touch your hands down to your chair seat or your blocks so they're just in line with your shoulders. And you really want to be framing the inner and outer right foot evenly, so same distance with the hands to either side of the foot. Okay, so I want you to squeeze the hips together. Remember the idea of the sitting bones coming together. Inhale here, and on your exhale, take your right hand to your right hip. And instead of broadening out with the sacrum, I want you to kind of move in a lateral way toward the midline and turn your chest to the right. We're playing with expansion, but we're bringing it into the body. Inward instead of outward. Good. So the extension really keeps kind of taking care of itself here. I want you to keep track of keeping yourself moving inward in the lower back and the hips across the sitting bones. And then maybe the top arm goes up. Squeeze your hip bones together, but you're moving outward across the chest. That's going to remain open, inward across the hips, sacrum, pelvis. Good, one more in-breath. And then exhale, you're going to take the hand back to the block. You can lead with your left hand coming off the block first and kind of windmill yourself up if it's safe to do that. Otherwise, find a safe way to return to kind of that five-pointed star shape, and then you can jump or step back together. So hopefully that made a little bit of sense. BKS Iyengar talks about involution and evolution, and at every pose, we kind of have to play with the balance of contracting and expanding. When we're talking about expansiveness in the body, it can move out, away from the body, it can move into the body. I'm trying to kind of show you that. When you feel ready, you're going to transition to second side. So you might be moving your chair, you might be moving your blocks. And you can set up the pose by jumping or stepping out when you're ready. Hands to your hips, rotating from the root of the left thigh, root of the right thigh as well. You want to have your hips and shoulders squarely facing the short edge of the mat. Moving in across the mid-body toward the center of your body. Inhale, raise the arms. Exhale, extend forward. Put your blocks in line with your shoulders equally to each side of the left foot. You feel that nice extension of your spine that will kind of continue and dominate. So I want you to really focus in on squeezing your hips together. Feeling very stabilized that way. And then you're going to take left hand to left hip. And on an exhale, revolve your trunk to point to the left as it's revolving triangle. Really actively moving that right hip bone toward midline. And then maybe the top arm goes up, maybe it doesn't. And then bringing the hand back to the blocker chair. You might leave with that right hand coming off first. You might find a safer way to exit and return to that 5-pointed star. And then jump or step back in. And put yourself in mountain pose. And you'll notice as you practice, that point 0, it starts to show up on its own. Okay, so now we're going to play with a couple of poses where the obvious is the broadness, the less obvious is the extension. So warrior 2 is where we're going to start. I want you to take your blocker chair back to the right. Just needs to be 1. I mean, if you're using blocks, obviously you're not using 2 chairs. So if it's a block, you're using just 1. And we'll jump or step out when you're ready. You can put your hands back on your hips. Turning right toes out, left toes in, moving from the roots of the thighs. Steering your torso back to square up with the broad side of the mat. Feeling the hips are even, the shoulders are even, without the knee rotating inward, of course. Keeping your knee looking at your right toes. We're going to extend the arms now laterally. And on an exhale, take the right knee over the right ankle. So there's all of this kind of width in this pose. This broadness is already there. So for warrior 2 today, I want you to really just keep your attention on the central axis from the pelvic floor all the way up to the crown, keeping it vertical and buoyant, meaning every in-breath, fill up a small balloon between the vertebrae. Just make your spine a little bit lighter and more floaty. And the obvious kind of broadness of the pose, that'll be maintained kind of without your effort. Just keeping track of the spine, the ascension of the spine, the lightness, the quality of extension. Good. And now we'll carry this into side angle pose. So inhale. On your exhale, I want you to take your torso to the right, and you're either going to anchor your hand to your chair seat or to your block in front of the foot, to the inside of the foot, bringing your left hand on your left hip. And now we're still playing with the central axis with the spine. We're just in a different kind of orientation to gravity. So tailbone to crown idea. Every in-breath, like you have a bun on the top of the head, someone's gently pulling it with every in-breath. Good. And now you're going to bring yourself out of the pose. Lift your block aside, turn your toes forward, spread your arms, jump or step back in. And you're back in mountain pose. So allowing your breath to be what it is here. Noticing the imprint on the energy body. Noticing the mental state that follows. Noticing if that point 0 is a little more spontaneous now, not as much of an effort to get there. And then when you're ready, you'll set up for side 2, block or chair seat to the left. And then then when you're ready, jump or step out. Good. Hands to the hips. Taking the left toes out, right toes in, making sure your torso turns gently from left to right. Your kneecap did not follow with that. It's still doing its own thing, looking at left toes. Extend the arms in a broad way, expansive. Inhale, and on the exhale, take the left knee in line with the left ankle. Keep your torso upright. Book on your head idea. And so you feel all of this kind of broadness in this pose. I want you to think about the extension, the verticality, the central axis, the lightness there. There's a lot of weight to the limbs here. So tapping into the lightness of the spine will give you some more harmony in the pose. Your gaze is off to the left. There should be a little bit of contraction at the pelvic floor to shuttle the energy of the spine up. We always have to meet gravity, of course. And then taking this pose, come to the top of an inhale, extending the whole torso in the direction of left, placing that left hand on the chair or the block. Try to be inside the foot. That is going to give you a little bit more leverage to turn the torso. And then again, connect the dots, tailbone, crown of your head. Every time you inhale, like you have that top knot, someone's gently pulling, still lengthening the spine. Side angle pose. Beautiful. You're going to bring yourself out of the pose on an in-breath. You can straighten the leg at the same time. Turning the toes forward, make sure you're not going to trip over your block or chair. And then bring yourself back to Tadasana, one way or another. Drop the shoulders. Keep the spine light. And see if you can just bring attention to the broadness within the body here. The forehead, back of the neck, the shoulders, chest, abdomen, sacrum, hips, backs of your thighs, knees, calf muscles. The broadness to the bottoms of your feet. Okay. Now we're going to do a couple more standing poses. We're going to do warrior one, and again, you can have the chair seat to the right or two blocks. And then you're going to jump or step out. We'll take the hands onto the hips. We're going to move the right toes out, left toes in, and point the hips squarely at the right edge of the mat. So the obvious here is extension. This isn't one of those lateral poses where we have the feet out sideways or the arms out sideways, so we don't have a lot to signal the body for the broadness factor. So we're going to try to locate broadness in the pose today. So first, start with your straight legs, especially the back leg, which we tend to forget about. Straighten the back leg. Raise the arms, imagine a strap around your wrist to start to invite that broadness. Broaden the forehead, soften the temples. Obviously, the spine elongates here. We don't have to really coax that. It comes more automatically. Come to the top of an in-breath, exhale the right knee above the right ankle. And now I just want to imagine you feeling all the broadness, the work of the body that crosses the central axis. Remember, your thighs are a good place to start because this is such a leg pose. Broaden the backs of the thighs. Broaden the back of that left knee. Broaden your sacrum. Broaden the abdomen. Broaden the armpits and the chest. And just notice how that work complements
the verticality of this pose that we can really get caught up in. We can really get seduced by the upward movement and forget about the broadness. And then we don't have a balanced pose. Okay, so now we're gonna transition back to a straight leg. I was gonna bring you into warrior three, but I think we're tired, so we'll come back to it. So straight leg, pivot wide. Don't worry about your blocks, jump or step back in. So I had you hold warrior one a little too long to expect a good warrior three to follow. So we'll just do warrior one on each side and then we'll tie it into warrior three. Just take a few moments in Tadasana. Observe the breath. And notice, you don't always have to tell ourselves where the energy is. If this is a vertical pose or a broad pose, you should be able to feel it. Naturally, we feel kind of a more extension in this pose. And hopefully you can sense that. All right, so we'll try warrior one on the other side. You don't need the blocks or chair for that, so just leave them alone. You can jump or step out. Take your hands to your hips as you prepare your kind of your lower half. And then take some time fully extending both legs, even though we know we're going to bend the front leg. We want to feel both legs very firm, and we want right here to feel the moving in across the hip line and sitting bone line. This is going to stabilize you. Raise the arms. On an exhale, take the left knee above the left ankle. So see if you can still compact your hips, but somehow still feel a lateral broadness across the sacrum. If you looked at the flesh of the sacrum, it wouldn't be all wrinkled up. Somehow the flesh is smooth and broad. Resist into that imaginary strap with your hands, broadening the armpits, the chest, the shoulders. Broaden the forehead, soften the temples. Broaden the back of the right knee. Broaden the ball mounds between the right big toe ball mound, small toe ball mound. Broaden the right heel. And then inhale, straighten the leg. Turning yourself to a nice broad lateral pose. And then jump or step back in. Quietly in Tadasana. So when we kind of start to perfect the poses, you should maybe see a little bit of that residue here now that you're out of the pose. Maybe it's a little sweeter, a little less like you did something really hard and tough. And maybe not, but just start to notice if there's any difference with the residuals when you're working with this idea of harmony in your poses. And then we'll tie it into warrior three like I promised. So we'll set back up to right side. This is where you do want a chair. Maybe if you know you can't balance in warrior three. If you know you can balance in warrior three, you don't need hand support. If you don't know which it's going to be today, then have something there just in case. To the right. All right. So we'll jump or step out. This is our last jumping or stepping out. We'll set up for warrior one again. Pointing the hips to the right. Taking some time with the straight legs. Moving the hip points, sitting bones together to compact ourselves there to stabilize. But without shrinking or squishing the flesh. Take the arms up. Inhale, top of the breath, exhale, right knee above right ankle. You're going to pivot off the left heel without disturbing the pose. Anchor, kind of anchor over the right thigh. So you're bringing your chest toward your right thigh. Step in with your left foot. And on an exhale, raise the leg. You might put your hands down on your chair or block at this point. So now find your broadening points. It's going to really complement the work that standing leg has to do, the work the spine has to do to keep shuttling up. So broaden across the chest, the armpits, broaden the back of both thighs, both knees,
Broaden the abdomen toward the lower back. Keep the hip points moving together. Keep the sitting bones squeezing together. Good. And then inhale back to warrior one. Nice work. And then you can straighten the leg, pivot wide, and jump or step back in. Be in Tadasana for a few moments. And then when you're ready, if you need hand support, you'll take it to the left. If not, don't worry about props. You shouldn't need them. And then you can go ahead and jump or step out to warrior one legs. Finding those two straight legs first. Taking the arms up. Squeeze your hips together. Broaden the armpits, chest, shoulders, backs of your legs. Inhale, top of the breath. Exhale, left knee over left ankle. Pivot off your right heel. So your right heel is in line with your right toes and it's off the floor. Inhale again. Exhale, extend over the left thigh. Step in a little closer with the right foot. And on an exhale, raise the leg. And think about broadening your body away from the central axis, except for the sitting bones and hips. Find all the other places you can locate broadness. And then find a way to step back into warrior one. Nice landings. Straighten the left leg. And then pivot yourself back to 5-pointed star position. Jump or step back in. Taking your last Tadasana here. We'll just stay about a half a minute. Just observing. So you don't have to control breath. You don't have to control effort in the body. You don't have to control the brain. It's like a standing Shavasana. You're just watching. Okay, so last but not least, and I want everybody to use a chair for this one. We're going to do wide leg standing forward bend. The space of the torso of the spine is what gets lost. So we're going to bring our attention back to that light, buoyant, airy, spacious, extensive spine. Because the broadness and the expansion of the poses is more obvious and automatic. If you want to cover your chair seat up with a blanket, you can, just to make it a little more comfortable. And I realize I didn't have everybody get a chair, so if that's not happening, you can work with 2 blocks, that'll be fine. Just stepping your feet wide, but make sure the toes are in front of the heels. Make sure your bottoms of your feet are broad and spacious so that you didn't just squish them. And then we're going to put the chair out far away enough that your torso becomes kind of level with the floor. And your head is going to come down. And so just recognize that we kind of automatically receive all this input of broadness in the body. And what's not as automatic is that we still want to encourage that effervescent, buoyant spine. So every time you breathe in, just draw the skull away from the sacrum. Give your spine a little support by bringing the belly just gently toward the back. Resting your attention in the spine. Just another 3 or 4 breaths here. And you can start to raise your head. Use your hands for support. Bring the feet slowly together. We're going to finish up on our backs. So if you'd like a little elevation for your head, you might fold a blanket. And we'll just apply this in one more way in our Patanjali. We're just going to do 2 of them on each leg. So you'll want your strap. And you can work with an open strap, meaning you're probably going to have to take the loop out of it. And go ahead and take hold of your right foot. And you'll just put the strap right underneath, I should say right below the ball mounds. And then you're gonna wrap your hands, of course, so that you don't waste a lot of energy just gripping the strap, and slide down the straps until your elbows hit the floor. And then you can extend left leg. So tap into the broadness of your left leg. Remember, this would be your standing leg. Spreading back of the thigh, back of the knee, back of the calf muscle. So less obvious here in this particular Patanjali is the broad qualities. So the spine is tall, the legs are tall. They know how to do that in this pose, especially when we're standing, that's obvious. So I want you to tap into a broader forehead, broader shoulder girdle, broader chest, armpits that can aerate, so make space. If your armpits feel really congested or tight, find a way to make space in the armpits, broaden the belly toward the back, and of course, broadening the backs of the legs like we talked about. And with all of that, maybe the right leg can come closer, but keep your attention really, your effort really applying to the broad quality. And just so that we can kind of repeat that without repeating the whole instructions, just switch to your left side now. Do the very same thing on the left side. Once you have the leg up, you can extend right leg. So the energy running with the spine is obvious. Try to find the grid across the body, the space across the body. Nice. Okay, and then contrary to that, we're going to take the right leg to the side, in which case the broadness, the expansion will be obvious, the extension won't be as forthcoming. So we're going to spend our effort on the extension, the central axis. So once right leg is up, extend left leg, pass both straps to right hand, wrap the straps around your hand, bring the elbow all the way to the floor, extend left arm to the side. On an exhale, move the right leg to the right. And rather than focusing on the limbs to the periphery of the spine, focus on the spine itself. And every time you breathe in, think about that top knot, the little bun at the top of the head, someone's gently pulling, gently, keeping the spine really extensive, spacious, to balance out the qualities of moving laterally. Good. And now bring the leg back to center. We'll switch to the left foot being aerial leg. Left hand holding both straps, left elbow touching the floor, right leg extended, right arm extended perpendicular from the trunk. And on an exhale, taking the left leg to the left. And then just gently shepherding your attention to the spine, even though your attention might really try to pull into the left heavy leg. You'll bring a lot more balance and harmony to the pose if you stay with the center body. The intersection of the expansion and the extension. Just 3 more breaths, elongating the central axis from the tailbone all the way out through the top of the head. And then go ahead and move your leg back to center. And go ahead and step down, take your strap away. And we'll draw the legs in for reclining child's pose, hugging the thighs close, tilting the chin into the chest. And then once your thighs are as close as they're going to be, keep them in that kind of closeness, but separate the knees. And then keeping the knees wide, let go of the legs, reach through the space between your knees, grab your big toes, ankles, or shins, and start to gently draw one foot at a time to center. So you're rocking side to side on your lower back. Very soothing, hopefully. And then you're gonna help yourself slow it down enough that you're back to the middle. You can join the knees, step the feet down one at a time, and begin to set up for final resting pose. Make sure to do any other movements that your body is requesting so that they don't bother you for your Shavasana. Anything else that needs to be addressed, make sure to address it here. And so Shavasana is kind of a perfect pose because the limbs are only slightly away from the central axis. They're not 90 degrees. So make sure your feet are wider than hips, but not a lot. Your hands are wider than shoulders, but not a lot. Hands wide enough that armpits can aerate is the perfect distance. And hopefully now with all of that work, we come into what's described as a sattvic state where we've balanced energies in the body and we feel pretty automatically equalized. We don't have to work for it, in other words. And so you're back to just being the witness. Zero effort here, mentally, physically, zero effort with breath. You're just watching, and there's nothing that can show up here would be wrong. So just that idea of allowing is so important in Shavasana. We're not trying to suppress anything. There's no wrong outcome. We're replacing any judgment or expectation just with curiosity and with interest. And leaving all of the lessons aside, the true test is, do you feel any amount more present? This is all just work that we do to bring the mind closer to stillness. Just start to take a few deep cleansing breaths, maybe allowing more breath to flow out than you previously were. Maybe taking bigger breath in than you previously were. As you breathe in, just feel expansive, and as you breathe out, notice how everything kind of returns to the middle. We're always naturally in these states of expanding and contracting. And finding your way back to your unconditioned breath, the breath that breathes you. When you're ready, inviting some small, simple movement in, letting it trickle in from the outermost points of your body inward. Begin to bend your knees and slide the soles of the feet to the floor. Take your hands onto your chest or belly by bending the elbows. When you're ready, gently easing to either side of your body. And from side lying, gently bring yourself up to seated. And just sitting quietly for a couple moments. The hands meeting in front of the heart, the thumbs, base of the thumbs lifting up gently on the breastbone. Feel the flesh of the chest rising up and over and down the back. And keep your gaze pointed down. Let's take a deep breath in through the nose. And let it go. From the place within me that I know to be divine, honor that place within each of you. Namaste. Right. Thanks everyone for being here. And nice work today. From my view, it was great work. And so feedback always welcome. If you have any questions, always reach out to me, and we'll see you guys hopefully soon. Take care.